Welcome to Global Development Interrupted. I am Leah Petit. This episode is about agency, what it means to have it, what it feels like to lose it, and what it takes to build something new from the wreckage. Kathleen Borgueta spent 18 years in global health, most recently as a senior advisor at USAID, overseeing health programming across 15 countries in East and Central Africa. She was on maternity leave when the agency was dismantled and she was dismissed. We talk about what foreign aid looks like when it works, what the world loses when it's torn apart, and how a new mom with no roadmap turned her worst moment into something 1,200 people now call home. So let's get into it and meet Kathleen. It's good to see you, and welcome to Global Development Interrupted.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Can you tell me, where are you sitting right now?
I am sitting in my rather small Washington, D.C. apartment on a wonderfully cold day. It's our first snow of the year.
So Kathleen, tell me, you have been in the world of global assistance for quite some time. How long have you been in the industry?
Yeah, I chose my career path early. I've been doing this for about 18 years now.
So that said, you've probably been to many a conference, many a global meeting, many a webinar. So I know that you have a fun fact.
Yes. So my fun fact is that I secretly have like a whole other alter ego where I am a professional singer. This time of year, I like to tell people that during college, I made a little side hustle money as a singing telegram and did a lot of singing Christmas carols at different like law offices and places all over DC.
All right. So the other question I always ask is, where did you grow up?
I grew up about 60 miles north of New York City in a place called Newburgh, New York. It's a super like diverse city and town. My mom and dad actually met in the Philippines. My mom was a Navy nurse stationed in Subic Bay in the Philippines, where my dad was a civilian doctor working on the base. And they had a kind of whirlwind romance that was not super approved of by many on the base. So they decided to come back to the US and start our family. So my mom is a nurse. My dad's a retired OBGYN. So I kind of grew up in this medical space my whole life. And it wasn't exactly a secret that there was a high teen pregnancy rate in my hometown. And I just became really interested in like what were the social factors contributing to that. You know, why was I growing up in my family with access to information and resources and other young women in my area weren't? And what could I do about it? So I was super, involved in my community in a lot of different ways. Planned Parenthood specifically had this outreach for people to become peer educators. And I kind of felt like it was my duty as Dr. Borgueta's daughter to do this sex ed. And when I signed up, I had no idea what I was doing. I was kind of a sheltered kid, but I felt really passionately about trying to provide this information. And my high school actually was one of the ones in New York where they were getting additional funding for teaching an abstinence curriculum. So that's why Planned Parenthood was really trying to do more to educate, teens and particularly the young women in my community about what was available to them and really trying to empower them. So I was doing all this sort of stuff that we ended up doing years later, but I was doing, peer education, talking with people through what their options were, and also talking about agency, talking about the ways in which we can give consent, the ways in which you can negotiate and advocate for yourself. And that's a really powerful tool to give a young woman. It was definitely powerful for me as a young woman in this community. And I felt like for all the like extracurriculars and things that I was doing, it was the way that I was helping people in like a most tangible way. And I was hooked. I really felt like I was making an impact. And that's why I decided to follow this career path to now.
So Kathleen, just so we're clear, the school was getting funding for abstinence only, and then Planned Parenthood was providing additional resources. Well, they've done studies on the abstinence only education, and they did find that it delayed sexual debut by one day. By one day.
Yeah, I mean, it was even the students, the kids in my classes kind of laughed about it. And we got like, the regular abstinence education where, we mostly got schooled on various STDs and STIs. That part was really covered. But when it came to like actually giving people tools, whether it was things like consent and advocacy work, or like the actual tools, condoms, long and short term birth control, those just weren't really available. So I really appreciated what Planned Parenthood did in our community. I had no idea at the time that it was sort of the foundational blocks for what would become a career that would take me around the world.
And there seems to be a lot of focus too for you on agency and being able to provide the correct tools for people to use their agency in their own space. And is that what led you towards the global development side? Or what was that shift from Planned Parenthood to global development?
Yeah, I think I was the Planned Parenthood space, as you remember when we were growing up, Planned Parenthood wasn't as much of a household name. And I think abortion and women's health were not topics that a lot of the kids that I knew were growing up hearing a lot. So all of this was really new and revolutionary to me. I did not come from a family of activists. So I think that all of this stuff felt very tangible and actionable to me in a way that, like, even as a 15-year-old girl, I could do and help people. So I think that's why the agency piece was so important to me. It really talked about how I, as an individual, could make decisions for myself and educate others about how to make the right decision for them. Not the right decision for me, but like what was going to make their future better, what was going to make their lives on a track that they wanted. And then definitely in sort of the development space for me, I think one of the things I really focused on and something I've thought about a lot since being at USAID is sort of what are some of the core things that I still really believe in, being a loving critic to the work that we did. And I think agency is really one of the core things. If we strip away the bureaucratic side of what we were doing, and some of the harder parts to think about the technical assistance work we used to do at USAID, the thing that really just I have no qualms, no bones about, absolutely want to put front and center on the table when we build back foreign aid is around agency, individual agency, agency of local communities, agencies of other countries.
Yeah. I mean, I will say it over and over again. People know what they need. And often it's just helping point them in the right direction or providing that encouragement or support in whatever way so that they can do it.
And just giving people options, right? I remember talking with a former boss of mine who had worked on the female condom project
Oh
and
my God, the female condom. The
all the
female
money.
condom. Is that still a thing? Is the female condom still a thing?
I
Like,
don't think so.
I just if no one has seen the female condom, Google that now and look it up. It's like a shower cap.
But I think what was really great, so Mitchell Warren, the head of AVAC, had worked on this project, and he talks really profoundly about, like, we came up with a solution to a problem, and there was a problem, and there was a solution, but it wasn't the solution people were asking for. And even throughout the process, we just like didn't change any of the directions. Like we kept on making the same choices because that was the deliverable. But I think just across so much of the development work that we've done, with the best of intentions, with a lot of really great tools often, sometimes we just weren't aligning with the problems people were citing. We were solving the problems we wanted to solve. When I think about what could be done better, I think it's how can we solve the problems people want to solve? So I think that's why I'm so focused on agency right now. I've really been thinking about it in my current work, in the work we've done, and looking back at, where do we go from here? It's really sort of been the linchpin of the way that I'm thinking about my work then and moving forward.
All right. Well, before we get to what you're doing now, let's talk about what the work was that you were doing at USAID. So, what was your role at USAID?
So I had a complex title. I was a senior advisor and regional lead for East Africa in the country of office support. And all that really means is that I was the main point person helping to oversee and steer our health programming across all the different health technical areas for 15 countries in East and Central Africa. So a lot of my work was sort of being that connector, being the hub, having that 3,000-foot view of all the different things going on. And during my time, honestly, it was just like outbreak, 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 COVID, political instability, COVID. It didn't really have as much to do with sort of the cornerstones of health that I'd worked on previously. And it was a lot about responding to concurrent and building crises in the region.
Is there a specific story that exemplifies your work?
I think every day was really different in this position. But I think the big thing that I think about in our work and sort of around this, story around solving the right problems, I'm really proud I was able to take a detail to help us launch the COVID vaccine in 2021, bringing it to the countries around the world. In my portfolio, that meant about 50 million vaccines emergency deployed to countries in East and Central Africa. And as part of that, we were asked to build and facilitate the maintenance of two cold chain facilities in Somalia. With all the COVID vaccines, because they were these mRNA vaccines, they required even colder temperatures than like your normal fridge or freezer that you would see most current vaccines. Our cold chain facilities help to ensure that these are kept in optimum temperatures so that they can be utilized to their fullest.
That you did that in Somalia, which is incredibly difficult because Somalia doesn't have a great infrastructure. It's been a conflict zone for decades.
It was a really big challenge. It required a lot of supply chain support, training for individuals to utilize and maintain these facilities. It was a huge achievement and it seemed really undoable. I had a lot of questions about how it was going to be done, but with incredible partners on the ground, working with UNICEF, working with WHO, and working, with a lot of Somali nationals to get this work done, we were able to do it in two different locations, which was incredible and really extended our ability to be able to do not just COVID work, but other vaccines as well to a region that really needed it. So really, really incredible work. It's one of those stories where like we did something really incredible. I'm super proud that we were able to roll it out. It was kind of insurmountable when I initially thought of all the hurdles we needed to go over. And we were able to do it in an incredible collaborative environment where we had high political will and people really came to the table in an emergency response. So, like all the wonderful things that aid does that I'm really proud to attach my name to. But also, I think part of the storytelling here is about, are we making the lives of people the best? Are we answering the call that we're being asked? Are we solving the problems that people had that are like closest to their heart? I don't know that everybody in Somalia was like, yes, we absolutely need a cold chain facility. So it's one of the stories that I think about in terms of this sort of arc of where were we, what did we accomplish, where are we going when we think about foreign assistance.
And so now, with what we are seeing in the world today with the United States and the dismantling of USAID, what's some of the things that you worry about the most?
The outbreak responses depended so much on the people. I really worry because I know that those people don't exist here anymore. They're not employed anymore to be helping to bring that clarity from chaos in the responses. But also, we're not supporting the people who were in these countries who were doing the lion's share of making sure that these outbreaks were surveilled, monitored, and locked down. I worry about next outbreak that happens, their ability to have the correct data they need, being able to roll out these emergency surveillance teams. I worry about the quality of the data that they're going to have to be able to make decisions about how they deploy their medical workers, deploy their community health workers, deploy goods and services to try and keep these outbreaks from spreading. I'm concerned about the federal workforce. Those were the things that I was working on, but these have like real catastrophic costs. It's not just, oh, these people aren't working anymore. In these kinds of outbreaks, these are highly contagious and often, without the right medical supports, very fatal outbreaks. So it could really escalate very quickly. Casualties could rise very quickly. So I have a lot of concerns when I think about like the actual folks that this will be affecting and its ability to really devastate an area very quickly with high fatalities. And unnecessarily, we now have these tools. We have the playbook for how this should work. But the supports just won't be there to make sure that it's happening effectively and in the most responsive way.
And that it affects all of us. And then we've seen that with COVID-19. Started in China and it made its way around the globe. And now, globally, there has been a dip in life expectancy, even in the United States because of COVID. The only other disease that we have seen that with is HIV/AIDS.
Oof.
So it's just, what's to come, especially when we've seen this incredible regression in the federal workforce. And
Mhm.
I think about Project 2025 and one of the key authors, Russell Voigt, now the director of the Office of Management and Budget. He was captured saying in a speech that he wanted bureaucrats to be traumatically affected and federal workers to be viewed as villains. What do you think, Kathleen? Do you think he did a good job?
I think so. I often don't want to let that narrative win. I often don't want to make myself the victim, especially as somebody who's like worked in really extreme contexts and has seen real suffering. I feel often that like my suffering is not the same. I don't like to think of myself that way. But like, yeah, my whole life has been upended. So while I try not to think of myself, certainly not as a villain, but certainly not as somebody who like allowed themselves to be traumatized, like, yeah, this really sucks and it hurts in a personal and profound way. The other quote that I constantly think of is that the cruelty is the point. Like this cruelty to others around the world who are, suffering fatally with their lives. They are suffering from the dismantling of USAID. And also the federal workforce is suffering with this loss of purpose, loss of jobs, loss of the money that they rely on to provide for their families. It's profound when you zoom in and when you zoom out, the repercussions.
And the emotional impact of it, just as you said, with the workforce and then with lives lost across the globe. What is it, 14 million deaths of people who will die just because of the dismantling of USAID? It's a
And
lot to
that,
take
what is
in.
it? What are they saying now? It's like 80% of those were women and children.
Yeah. It's always women and children that get the brunt of it, which takes us to the point of you don't want to be a villain and you
Yeah.
don't want to be traumatized. So the president signed the executive order that paused all of the foreign assistance funding, and we all got laid off. And what did you do?
So, yeah, it's hard to even express how just incredibly crazy the week after the inauguration was. I was on maternity leave and I was desperately trying to reach our employer to find out what I was supposed to do. I wasn't supposed to return to work. And then I got my termination notice in my postpartum support group 11 weeks after giving birth to my firstborn. And I really didn't know what to do next. All of our benefits ended at midnight that night. And I had a lot of questions about not just like, what am I going to do? What's my next job? But like, literally, how do I get health insurance again? What are we supposed to do for my most immediate maternal health needs that I was having in that exact moment?
We should also mention you and I were institutional support contractors. So when we say we got laid off, we were just cut off. There was medical benefits went away. There was no severance. There was nothing.
Everything was taken away. And I just felt so unplugged and isolated. I wasn't with my colleagues sort of in the lead up to the inauguration. I hadn't been a part of the transition in a way that, like, in a normal year where I wasn't pregnant and having a baby, I would have been plugged in to USAID and how we were preparing for these things. I don't think anyone was truthfully prepared, but I felt especially isolated.
You know, Kathleen, I can tell you no one
Yeah.
knew what was going on, and then we were all cut off. There are colleagues in Angola that I don't know how to reach out to
Yes.
because
I
suddenly
have the
everything
same
is
feeling.
going.
There's dozens of colleagues that I've tried to find through LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram that I just don't even know how to find. And I don't know that I'll ever be connected with them, which is incredibly heartbreaking. Um, Especially because it was very special in the lead up to having my baby. Like, people were checking in on me and, asking me about my recovery and having that like personal interaction with all these colleagues who were maternal health specialists, check in on me and my life. And then suddenly to have like my phone wiped, my email wiped, not being able to follow up with them was yet another of like a many, like, thousand cuts of this process.
It's
But
crazy
I
to
was,
just think a whole part of your life was just pulled away and
yeah.
gone because a couple billionaires thought that would be a really good idea.
Yeah. And it felt so insignificant all of a sudden, this thing that I had been so tied to, so much a part of the identity that I had put forward for myself. It was very tied to like the kind of mother I thought I was going to be. Like, I had looked up to moms like you, Leah, who'd like been moms and continued in this work, even as hard as it is. And like, even how hard it is to be traveling. I'm very serious. I remember looking up to you and being like, wow, she's like doing this.
Thank
Like,
you.
and we were surrounded by in our community mothers who just managed it. Like, some people made it look easier than others, I'll be totally honest, but I was intentionally paying like a lot of my planning around mothers that I had seen do this and do this well and like still stayed committed to the work. Like being at USAID in that kind of a community, I had put like a lot of effort towards like building my motherhood around that. So I didn't really know what I was doing as a mother, brand new, didn't have a real village here, just felt so isolated, so without a community. I was a part of this postpartum support group, so I had some, touch points around being a new mom, but people didn't really understand what I was going through. There were other folks in my support group who were
Mhm.
federal workers who sort of understood, but the particular amount of vitriol that USAID was treated with, the particular attacks on our corner of the workforce was different.
Is
So it was
there a
really a challenge.
particular statement or, like, something that was said about us that sticks with you?
Yeah, like all of the stuff about the personal attacks around like being a worm or being a fraudster and, to be painted as someone who wasn't like a very conscientious steward of American taxpayer dollars really got under my skin. Uh, Especially because I came up through PEPFAR, through what was widely considered to be like the crown jewel of bipartisanship. It really hit me hard in a time when like I wasn't sleeping, my hair was falling out, I was having like a very typical, tough postpartum experience. And really just reconsidering who I was in every facet. Motherhood sort of breaks you and puts you back together again. And to be sort of reconceptualizing my career at the same time was like more that I could bear.
It's so true, and I also just think, like, this administration was attacking Americans. They're attacking individuals like you and me and saying that we were bad people. Is that what the office of the president be doing? Attacking its own workforce? Attacking Americans?
I think about like, a lot of the rhetoric around like being a business person. And I can't think about like a single successful CEO or corporate leader who would say these kinds of things about their workforce. What successful business person is out there just being like, all my workers are fraudulent and lazy and, painting them in this light? How does this make anyone successful? And how does it make the project of America successful? Like, just doesn't add up to me in such a personal way, but also just like completely pragmatically, I don't understand how that's an effective leadership tactic.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about what they hate, but not a lot of talk about what they're
Mm.
willing to create. You've created something. So
Yes.
you came out of your hair falling out, having to redefine yourself as a mom, your new
Mhm.
career, creating community, and you created.
Pivoting parents. I became a founder and an entrepreneur, which is not a journey I thought I was going to be doing ever, let alone in the same year I was raising my infant son. But basically, I created a job search community and platform for fired federal workers and really laid off people of any kind to navigate this crazy journey while caregiving. Because I really just felt so much of what was out there for folks trying to put their lives back together was super inaccessible for parents like me, and really wanted you to sort of think about yourself either as a worker or as a parent. And I was finding more and more that who I was and who I was becoming, it was just too tied together. It was too hard to just think of myself as a mom or just think about myself as somebody trying to be employed. There was so much of both circumstances that I needed to create a community of people who understood that. So we're now about a 1,200 person membership across all of our platforms. And
Congratulations.
thank you. You've got members across, I think we're up to 14 states across the US. A reminder to your listeners that I think it's 80% of the federal workforce is not in the DC area. So there really are federal workers in every corner of the country. And we also have members calling in from, I have 4 countries in Africa, 2 countries in South America, and I think 6 countries in Europe. So we're 4 continents strong in our work to try and rebuild our careers while caregiving and wanting to provide better for ourselves and our families.
Kathleen, Why do you think it's important that women are allowed to have both a career and be a mother?
I think that women should be able to have, whatever combination of motherhood and career that works for them and works, for the family that they want. For me, it meant, that I really wanted to be this kind of working mom who was doing good and also providing for my family and being someone that my son could look up to. And I think that it's really, again, to come back to our theme of agency for today, that I didn't know was going to be our theme. It's really about having choices and being able to work hard and have those choices be available to you. It's so important to be able to invest yourself where you can be most successful, where you want to put in the most effort. And I think if it's motherhood and a career, you should get to pick both.
And what has been the response from the community?
It's been really great. I think there is sort of a larger movement around parenthood and the challenges that are facing working parents more generally, even outside of this like convergence of horrible crises happening right now for federal workforce. So I've been really impressed and truly humbled by the response we've gotten. We've been able to, get the word out in some media. We've been able to have this community recognized both in the, larger DC area and as I said, internationally. So we've been really welcomed. I'm not somebody who naturally would have put my pregnancy and my motherhood journey like out for all to see, but something that's really been a growth area for me is that I found that sort of living this experience loudly um has really it's completely shocked me and humbled me how openly people have sort of received that and the community that's come around that. The more vulnerable I've allowed myself to be, the more authentic and honest about how hard this has been. The community has really sort of risen up to meet that. And I've really just gotten so much incredible feedback, so much support, and people are joining. It's really become like a little movement.
It's also just nice to hear
Yeah.
encouragement around using your voice. I felt that with a lot of the push that we experience being called a ball of worms and criminals and villains, they were trying to suppress our voice. And so to hear you say, I got louder and it was welcomed, it's nice to hear because I think more of us can get louder. I know that's also
Yeah.
an area of growth for me.
I think the antidote in some ways to being villainized is this is as human as it gets. Like this is messy. I think a lot of people understand the struggle of having a layoff. And I think a lot of people understand the struggle of being a new mom or parenting in general or being a caregiver and how hard that is. I think that there's a lot of common ground here, even as polarizing as so much of this experience has been. I think the fact that I'm a new mom with a new baby with this like sort of extraordinary circumstance who's also humanizing the experience and bringing it to like a very um I don't want to say nonpartisan necessarily, but just like a very relatable story really helps to sort of take away this facade that we're these villains and in the deep state. I'm a regular person who picked a career and really felt like, I was called to this work and wanted to help people who also now has a baby and doesn't know what to do next and how to provide for that child or how to pay for childcare, which I think is a really normal story that you hear across all of our numerous social media and media platforms right now. So I'm hoping that in telling the story more loudly than I'm comfortable with and sort of showing people who I am, even people who don't care about USAID or don't care about foreign aid, can see a little bit of themselves in me and hear a little bit more about our work and our story and the things that I'm passionate about. And maybe take more of an interest when maybe they just sort of assumed, that foreign aid wasn't worth it or that they didn't want their tax dollars going to random people around the world. So I'm hoping that by anchoring my story as a mother at the center of this and centering our community of parents, that some of that is breaking through.
I love how you put it. I'm an average American. I chose a career path. And I'm also dealing with all of the uncertainties around being a mom. And then my community was pulled away. And so I created a community. And why is that community so important?
One of my icebreaker questions I used to ask people, like, what would the name of your memoir be? What's the title of your memoir? And I've been often thinking right now, the chapter at least of my memoir is Forced into Hope. I don't want to have hope every day. There are a lot of days that hope feels false. But having a child and being invested in my community and invested in the global community forces me to have hope for the future. And more than that, forces me to act. I can't just hope somebody else does something. So that's something I've like tried to really think and ruminate in a good way on as I'm, trying to build out Pivoting Parents as a community. I feel very forced into this role in all the best and worst ways.
But if someone were
Yeah.
to look up Pivoting Parents, where can they find you? And what should they expect to see or receive or participate in?
Pivoting Parents is at Instagram at Pivoting Parents, and we're at pivotingparents.com. You can find there information about all the work that we're doing. Some of it's virtual, some of it's in person, some of it's been hybrid. So there's a little bit of everything on there. And we're really just trying to provide a platform for people to commit to their job search in a way that suits them, suits their family.
What is the key sort of message, or what do you hope listeners take away from this episode?
I think, to your point about being traumatized and, all of us not really wanting to play the victim, I think if you told me when we were all fired and I was like crying on the floor that this is where I would be, I wouldn't have believed you. I think the biggest thing, people are constantly like, how are you doing all of this? Like, I'm just doing it one step at a time, and it's not pretty and it's super messy. And I want people to feel empowered and have the agency to do like whatever that version of that is for them. I think just committing to yourself, if it's helpful, having that accountability from your friends and family, that was what I needed to get going. But just knowing that you're only traumatized truly if you don't move forward. I think like acknowledge your feelings, validate all the craziness that's going on for sure. But like the way that I try to tell myself I'm not truly being victimized here is by engaging with my community, by building Pivoting Parents, by helping other parents like me, uplifting my family while uplifting other families, and sort of making that the center of the narrative and making sure that I control the things I can control and try and make my impact the best that I can in this new role that I have now, not at USAID, but within this community and within my family and for myself just as much as for others.
What about to Americans not impacted by USAID dismantling? What do you hope they take away from this?
I would say that everybody is affected by this. I remember sort of the media headlines around Ebola when we were, are those the 2010s? I lost all track of time.
2014.
Thank you.
2014 is when it hit Texas. Yes.
Thank you. So like, don't think that this doesn't affect you. The thing about the outbreaks is, it can come to your door faster than you think, and it is not pretty. You might think that you're not affected. It's definitely a much more interconnected community than you think it is. But also it is a interconnected community in like all the positive ways too. Like I hope that listeners who aren't in foreign aid or aren't in development, didn't work USAID, hear the power in my super humble story of like just doing what you could do today, even with how messy everything is, that there are small incremental moves that you can make, that you can start a movement, and that you can contribute to something bigger than yourself, and you'll feel better about doing that.
Especially in this environment when so many
Yes.
people are working to make sure that we feel powerless.
Yeah. And I think as much as possible, I try to take that power back, and really just exercise what rights I have. Like, I don't want people to think that I don't notice what rights and what voice I have. And I want people to know that I'm grateful for it and that I'll use it when it counts.
Well, Kathleen, thank you for joining me on Global Development
Thank you.
Interrupted.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been an avid listener. I'm always posting about listening to your episodes while I'm breastfeeding or going on stroller walks. So you have been an active part of my childcare duties for the last couple months.
I love to hear it. And the more likes, follows, shares, the better.
Excellent. We'll be on it.
All right. Well, thanks, Kathleen. This is Leah. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Global Development Interrupted wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe on Substack to get new stories and updates straight to your inbox. When you subscribe, you'll also get GDI Insights, short written reflections from people who built their careers in global development and public service. They reflect on the work, the disruption, and what they're carrying forward and what they want to see next. And remember to always like and follow. Until next time.